Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's free ACEC Lunch and Learn webinar. My name is Caroline Andrews. I'm the President and CEO of the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies of British Columbia. We are meeting today in more than 150 separate locations, and to unify us, we'd like to acknowledge that ACEC-BC is based in the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, in particular the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We are continuing to include this acknowledgement in our virtual events for many reasons, but one reason which I thought I'd share with you today is just as a reminder of the profound impact that your work has in our communities and on each of us individually. It gives me a chance to say thanks to all of you for keeping us safe and healthy every day as we shelter in our homes. Also this week marks the Canadian Mental Health Association's Mental Health Awareness Week. To support awareness and access to resources, on Monday, we released an effective leadership series to our website. Please take some time this week for self-care, and if you're able, please reach out to someone else and check in with them. Additional resources on mental health may be found on our new mental health resources page at acec-bc.ca, as well as through social media posts on Twitter and LinkedIn throughout the week. ACEC-BC represents more than 9,500 people working in 80 consulting engineering firms across BC, and over the past number of weeks, we've expanded our office reach to thousands of additional offices as we all move to home. Our association's purpose is to serve the interests of members through advocacy, creating opportunity for collaboration, and building profile for members and the industry. During this unprecedented time, we're working together to support consulting engineering companies. And while we miss meeting you in person, we continue to seek those chances to build connection between members, clients, and partners at events like this, and through our website and COVID-19 Resource Center, as well as through ACEC's many committees and other networks. All of our association operations, including events like this, have shifted to the virtual environment so that we can continue to support your practice as you work from home. In the coming weeks, we'll be offering a series of free Wednesday Lunch and Learn events like this one. Next week, we have our friends at Partnerships BC will be joining us to present on progressive design build. And in the last 2 weeks of May, we are hosting a two-part series, Leading Remote Teams with Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, presented by ACEC-BC and Engineers and Geoscientists BC. Later in June, our associate member Metrics will be joined by underwriter AXA XL for a discussion of managing scope creep. For advance notice of our webinars, please join our email list through the website. You can always stay on top of information from us by visiting the ACEC-BC webpage and specifically our COVID-19 Resource Center, where you'll find regular updates, relevant industry content, and information from our partner network. There you can also connect with us through the feedback portal to provide us with your perspective on how your organization is managing and how we can help. This afternoon, we have 3 speakers to join us for a discussion on digital sign and seal technology and the process of transitioning as both a consultant and a client. Following the presentation, there will be opportunities for questions. Please submit your question anytime using the question feature on Zoom. It's right on the bottom of your screen. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, beginning with Scott Campbell, Senior Principal and Chief Administrative Officer with ACEC-BC member firm RF Binnie and Associates. As Senior Principal, Scott provides guidance to Binnie staff and clients on a wide range of project management and transportation infrastructure projects. As CAO, he is responsible for professional practice programs and coordination with Engineers and Geoscientists BC, including overseeing Binnie's Organizational Quality Management Program and their accredited member and training program. Scott is a participant in EGBC's mentoring program and serves on ACEC-BC's Professional Development Committee. Scott noted that today is day 39 working from home, so appreciate that perspective and context.
Thanks.
Joining us from the eastern part of the country is Marc St-Jacques, Vice President Sales at Notarius. Marc holds a bachelor's degree in communication studies and has been working in the field of information technology for more than 20 years. Specializing in digital authentication solutions since 2009, Marc has personally assisted over 3,000 engineers to become more proficient in the digital authentication of electronic drawings. And finally, Gilbert Larocque, Deputy Chief Building Official and Field Inspection Section Manager from the City of Surrey. Gilbert is a registered professional engineer with Engineers and Geoscientists BC, Professional Engineers Ontario, and a member of the Law Society of British Columbia. After a military career in flight operations, flight test engineering, and project management, he shifted his focus towards the construction industry as both a legal counsel and consultant. Please join me in welcoming Scott, Marc, and Gilbert.
I hope you can hear me clearly and the line is stable. Just wanted to take maybe this moment because I know that we often get questions about what digital signatures are, electronic signatures are. So I tend to have a small portion of presentation that is sort of to level set everybody. And it's not going to take that long, but at least it'll put the right terminology with the right elements. And what I've taken the liberty of doing today is actually preparing work so that I can show you how you would sign a document, how a building official would receive it, would be able to review it, and would be able to apply a permit stamp of one type or another. And I've actually put together a few extra pieces to show you with Bluebeam and Adobe also. That way you've got at least a visual reference of how this all can happen and how it works. So it should take about 15 minutes, which I believe is the time I had to do this portion. But essentially, there are really three types of signatures out there. So really, I know we often perceive electronic signatures or digital signatures as something abstract and not as well known. But the fact is that there are three types that exist. All three are legally reliable at various levels. But essentially, you have an electronic signature, which would be a picture of your signature, which would be fine for the bottom of an email or just a quick note. However, not necessarily good for engineers or geoscientists looking to apply their seal to secure official records, and that would be a digital signature. And a digital signature is much more like a virtual passport that you use with the image of the signature and seal to apply your digital signature to secure the file, and to have the image of the seal signature to meet the requirements of the two components of visual element and the digital signature to secure the file. And of course, in the middle, you have everything else. So if we say that a digital signature is issued to a person, well, a trusted electronic signature would be one that is issued by a platform. So whether it's Consigno Cloud or HelloSign or DocuSign, if you've ever used any of these platforms, that would be what we would call a trusted electronic signature. Now, a trusted electronic signature would have the digital signature that is used by the platform, and the visual element would be also placed by the platform. And that's where I would imagine you're going to find the bulk of the requirements for basic documents, contracts, procurement, things of that nature. But for our purpose today, we are really going to take a look at digital signatures that are required for ACEC-BC members to apply onto official work product that is produced in British Columbia. And maybe just as a quick map overview, how the three types sort of line up. So electronic signatures would be at the low end of the legal reliability. And this is extremely important because we need to, this will be important further down the road. But you have here a self-signed certificate from Adobe. So in Adobe and Bluebeam, you have the ability to create your own digital signature. Now, the problem with this self-generated certificate is that there's no validation, there's no verification, and anyone can claim to be whatever they want, and anybody else can copy that. And that is why, even though technologically it is a digital signature, unfortunately, that certificate being self-issued falls under the low end of legal reliability for from an electronic signature perspective. And of course, in the middle, the trusted electronic signatures and your ACEC-BC digital signatures would be at the high end of that spectrum, along with jury cert for lawyers and notaries in BC that do work with the land title. That would be another use case for digital signatures. And we have our cloud solution that actually works with both types of signatures. Now, how do we trust a digital signature? Because it's one thing to have one, it's one thing to have your identity verified, but the fact is, how does someone go about verifying it if I'm the receiving party of that digital signature, that document that was digitally signed? Well, consider that the PDF format is a standard. Within that standard, they have this notion of what's called a trust store. And this trust store is where you would put all the certificates that you trust. By default, Adobe doesn't trust anybody or almost anybody. So it's up to the individual when they receive a document to make that conscious decision of saying, do I trust the ACEC-BC Certificate Authority branch or not? And if you do, well, then you can accept automatically that Adobe will verify and confirm the status of those. And the way this trust is transferred is that when you apply your digital signature to the file, well, that digital signature is part of our certificate authority. And within that certificate authority is the association, but we also generate what's called a root certificate. Now that root certificate is, think of it this way, is like the mother of all the children that are part of the Notarius certificate authority. And when we put it in when you sign a document, a PDF document, it will verify against that root certificate to see if it is still trusted. And that is mechanically how we can go about trusting digital signatures. And even though I'm using this scenario with our certificate authority, the mechanics of this are the same for any digital signature that is issued by a trusted third party that has validation available to it. Now, how does an engineer manage the issuance for digital signatures? Well, in the case of ACEC-BC, and a long time ago when the OQM program came out, and even before, there was this mention with regards to use of seal. And essentially, just like all the other engineering associations in the country, they all have this notion that you have to have both the electronic signature, the image of your seal, handwritten signature, date, and seal, along with a digital signature certificate issued by ACEC-BC. Because remember, even though I'm talking here with you, the fact is that Notarius is not the issuer of that digital signature. It is always under control of ACEC-BC, just like the wet stamp is under their control also. And what's interesting is that contrary to a lot of other associations, ACEC-BC has gone through the trouble of actually highlighting that the image is not equivalent to sealing a document and is not approved by ACEC-BC itself. So they do make the point that you have to have both the image and the digital signature. So now that we know that, I'm going to go through and show you what a digitally signed document looks like very quickly, and then I'll go into the live environment. So this is a PDF that has been digitally signed. It has the electronic signature, the visual element that is visible on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, in the signature panel, we have the digital signature. Now, how do I know this is Marc? Well, I would be able to go through the certificate details of this digitally signed document to drill down and see it. But if you notice a green check mark, it means that I've already trusted this certificate authority and it's telling me that it's all good. So I don't have to go through that detail, but for our purposes, we will. And more importantly, it's important to remember that when a document is digitally signed, that it's like a sheet of glass that is layered on top of the electronic record, making it impossible to alter the source content. So this sheet of glass can then be redlined if you want to. It can be marked up with other sheets of glass. It can have additional signatures that are added to it, but those signatures are all extra layers of sheets of glass layered on top of it. So it's important to remember that once a digital signature has been placed, the document is sealed. The only thing you can do is mark up and add additional signatures. And then if I look at the details of that certificate, well, I could see the DNA of my digital signature. So here it's telling me that it is the product called Certifio, and it belongs to a company called Notarius, and Marc, and my email address. Now, of course, in your case, here you would have ACEC-BC as the OU, the organizational unit, and then afterwards you would have your designation, your member number, and your name and email. So essentially everything that is on your stamp is found in the DNA of that digital signature. And when those two line up, that is when we have a perfectly duly authenticated record that we can provide to customers or to AHJs for approval. So now that we've covered the theory in about 12 minutes here, I wanted to take you through sort of the basics of what one would go about to do to sign a document. So if I take, for example, I'll take my first scenario here. So I have here Consigno Desktop, which is our PDF reader and signing tool. You do not have to use it, but we recommend it because it is custom designed for your industry. But it is as simple as clicking on Convert to PDFA to make it archive friendly. You don't have to do this, but this way here, you're producing a PDF that is built along the best standards for archiving purposes. And then of course I can go ahead and create a zone here, and I could go about just clicking on sign to add that seal to the document. Now at this point, I'm presented with a few elements. On the one hand, if I was practicing in other jurisdictions, I'd have access to my other digital signatures. I have a variety of images that are available to me. So whether it be the image of my signature or of my seal or a permit to practice or certificate of authorization if that was the use case that we were looking to do. So in our case, we'll just put the image of my seal, and I'll leave this empty for the reason I have my date here that appears, and I'm going to click on sign. At this point, it is going to prompt me to put in my password. And when I click OK, it will retrieve the file, place it onto the document along with the image. So I now have the electronic signature, the image over here, and the digital signature, which in Consigno would appear over here. Of course, once this is signed, well, there are a whole bunch of things we can do with this. So I'm just going to move this around here. So I have here just my unsigned sample. And then afterwards, if I wanted to only have the electronic image appear, I could have just the image of my stamp and no digital signature over here. Once I'm done placing the image of my stamp, I would be able to sign it with my digital signature. So in this scenario here, I have a PDF that has the image of my seal, my permit to practice, and it has the matching digital signatures to go along with it and secure the file. Now, once this is done, I would then be able to send it off to the municipality, and they could do markups on it. So if you noticed over here, it would say that the document is signed, but instead of saying here signatures are valid, it would say that there were unsigned changes after the last signature. So if I open up the signature panel, I would then be able to see the signatures, and I would also be able to see the annotations that were created. So over here I have the annotations that are placed, and of course, if all they were comments, I could then just choose to apply a permit to practice stamp onto the document. So in this particular instance, if I continue my workflow, I applied my digital signature, I did markups. I have two choices at this moment. I can either ask that they make the changes and then send me back an original that is clean, or I could accept that the red lines are more comments for my personal purposes and apply a digital signature over here. Now, in this case, Marco Faco is a self-signed certificate that I created in Adobe. So from a legal reliability perspective, may not be very high, but it would at least meet the requirements that as an official, I have then secured the file that has been submitted to me electronically. Now, of course, if I wanted to push this element a bit further, I could then have all of these comments, and instead of putting my Marco Faco digital signature, I could use the one that is digitally signed by my digital signature issued by a trusted third party. In this case, Notarius is the certificate authority as opposed to a self-signed certificate in this example here. So very quickly, I realize we've got just a bit of time and I want to leave plenty of time for my colleagues, but I wanted to take you through sort of the mechanics of it. And since many of you are often curious as to how do I sign with Adobe, I have taken the liberty here of taking the same document, and I will go ahead and digitally sign it with Adobe. So I have here my digital signature, same as in our case. You would draw a box. This box would then bring up the request to choose the digital signature of my choice. So I'm going to take this one, and I would choose my image. So it could be my seal over here, and I could click on sign. It would ask me to save it. And then it would go about asking me for my password. There we go. And at this point now, the visual elements are a bit different, but you have to remember that both the digital signature is a standard and the PDF is a standard. So they will all work with the tool of your choice. And for those of you interested, I also have here Bluebeam, same idea. I could just choose to use the pen feature over here, draw a box, take my digital ID, choose the image that I want, so either standard text or the image of my seal. Click on sign. Again, in the case of Bluebeam and Adobe, they force you to rename your files, which we can do overwrite in Consigno Desktop. And I'll just give it a chance here to go through. And since my session is open, it didn't ask me to put in my password, but you get the general idea that the mechanics of it are very different from one to the other. And if I could just wrap up on this, because I do want to be respectful of all the other participants. If you wanted to, one of the biggest benefits that we provide for ACEC-BC members is by using Consigno Desktop. You have the ability to take a set of documents over here, and consider that inside the right click of your mouse under Send To, you have the ability to batch apply templates, batch sign. But more importantly, for a municipal officer, if I wanted to take these documents and verify which one here is signed, I could right click and say verify signatures. And this would actually tell me right away which one is signed, which one isn't. And in this particular case, I know that only one of them was digitally signed with an ACEC-BC digital signature. The other ones were not. And maybe my better example, no, actually that is sort of the example there. Actually here. So if I take these documents, and I'll wrap up on this, on the right click of my mouse, I can, as a city official, say I'd like to verify all these signatures, make sure that they all using the right proper digital signature. And this will verify all the documents. It will tell me which one is digitally signed, how many digital signatures are there, and if it has a problem because it's a self-signed certificate, or if it has been modified since it was applied. The reason I bring this up is because Consigno Desktop is free. So for municipalities, this is a quick, easy way to batch verify documents before moving forward with the review of these files. I see there are questions that came up. I'm not sure, Carolyn, how you want to address that, but I'm hoping that this provided a very quick overview of how you could do this mechanically.
Mark, Michael asked the question, if I e-seal a document today, what happens in the future? For example, 15 years from now.
All right, well, so that's a really good question, and one that we get often. So I often use the analogy of a Visa credit card. So try to imagine your digital signature is like a credit card. So when you have a credit card, it's valid. You can buy things with it. Everything you buy is yours. If you stop paying for your credit card service, well, you can no longer use your credit card, but every transaction you did during the time that it was valid will remain valid in the future. And more, just as an extra layer of detail, we also include what's called a timestamp. So when you digitally sign, we prove that at the moment you were in good standing when you applied your digital signature onto it. So there's no worries that 15 years from now, it will look the same as it did the day you signed it.
Mark, you'd also talked about converting to PDFA as kind of one of the first steps. Maybe you could touch on the kind of archivability of PDFA versus other PDF formats.
Yeah, absolutely. So the PDF format by default is open source. It's a standard. There are extensions that were created and that have become ISO standards by themselves. So PDFA is for archiving. This has been around for quite a few years, probably over a decade now, and is really the de facto format for long-term archiving of PDF files. So at the government, this is often used as the preferred method for long-term archiving. And as I was mentioning, it really sort of tweaks and adjusts the document so that it is clean and can be future-proof and backward past compatible. There are other extensions that exist, whether it's PDFU, PDFX, PDFE, but for our purposes, really PDF or PDFA are really the two that interest you. And for anyone that interested in more information that are at that level of geekiness, there's a website called pdfa.org that has wonderful documentation on the subject matter.
You know, I'm just going to say it. I think you're in good company on the geekiness quotient with the participants in this call. Okay. Terry commented that when he first set up his digital seal, which was a few years ago, the seal and signature was one step, and now it looks like there's two steps. Is there a reason for the change? Is one more secure than the other?
No, it used to be that you would, the member was responsible for producing their image and scanning it and then uploading it to Consigno Desktop to use it. The only thing that I know that has really changed is the fact that it is issued by EGBC. So the image is issued by EGBC, and we issue the digital signature, but it all ends up in the same spot. And unless you're referring to when I showed an image of just a document without a signature, that was only for reference purposes. Otherwise, the mechanics are still the same. When I click on sign, whether it be in Bluebeam, Adobe, or Consigno Desktop, it will do both actions at once, the image of whatever you want along with the digital signature.
I saw Gilbert nodding his head as well.
Yeah. The whole issue about the picture of the seal, what happened, and I know from history, is that people were using their old worn out seals, stamping a sheet, scanning it, adding their signature, and then putting that onto their documents as part of the digital signature process. And some of the seals did not look very good. So some members put in a complaint. They said, could we get something? We pay for a digital seal. Could we get a digital signature? Sorry, could we get a digital seal? And APEG, sorry, at the time it was APEG, but EGBC obliged, and they provided the seal, the digital seal. If someone knows what they're doing, they can actually combine the two into one. So it may seem a little bit more complicated, but it was meant to put a crisper, sharper seal on the paper as opposed to the worn out reproduction. That's all.
And I would assume as a client, that is something that would be pretty important for you, especially in archiving.
Yeah. Well, yes. When I look and I try to see what the seal number is and I can't tell what it is, that's a bit of a problem. Or can't see the name.
And I think that part of the question also, I'm sorry, I was rereading it as the answer was being given there, that so just in case, and I want to make sure I answer this correctly, what we recommend is that the image of the seal and signature, you're right, be done in one single action. And what I've seen a lot more people do is actually they will upload their image on an iPad and will actually sign across with the iPad and save that image, which is actually what I do on the example that I give. Is the signature is not actually a scan, it's actually a crisp seal with a crisp signature on an iPad.
Yeah.
Food for thought, but that's what we would recommend.
Great, thank you. Jennifer wondered why the issuer in your example is noted as Notarius, not EGBC. Was that just because of the software that you're using for demonstration, or could you clarify it?
I was using just my regular presentation deck and elements that are, so try to imagine, so I realize there's a bit of confusion here, so let me try and paint a better picture here. I use my analogy of the credit card. So we are a trust network. So Notarius does not issue digital signatures to members or to EGBC members. We have partners, which are the branches that are EGBC, AIBC, and so on and so forth. So we have 38 partners, and each one of those partners manages their own branch. So much like Visa, consider we would be the Visa equivalent, and then RBC, Scotiabank, Bank of Montreal, and so on would be the professional associations that have customers or members that sign up for that specific Visa credit card. So that's part of the reason is that I'm not from EGBC, but it is definitely a service that is provided to the associations and under their sole control. So ironically, I like to say we manage right now about 28,000 identities, but we actually only have control over 37 of them, which are our staff. Otherwise, the other 27,000 some are actually under control of somebody else.
Okay. So Alvin was wondering, when signing and applying a seal in Adobe, is the image of the seal protected and not copyable?
There are no circumstances where the image cannot be copied. So from the moment that you can see it on a screen, you have the ability to snap it. And I think the key element here is that the OQM is very clear on the subject. If you find a PDF with only the image, so somebody, let's say, took the image of your seal, placed it onto another document, that would not be considered an original and you wouldn't be held responsible for it. And on the flip side, the person receiving it should be aware or will find out that they are holding in their hands a copy that could be anything and not something that you've taken responsibility for. But when it comes to the image, unfortunately, nothing that Control-Alt print page or Command Shift 4 can't fix, unfortunately.
Okay. The next question I'm going to direct to Scott and or Gilbert, because it has to do with redlining. So when you sign and seal a document and then allow markups, how do you revalidate that document?
I'll take a shot at it, and I'm sure Gilbert or Marc will correct me to say if I'm right. I think like Marc said, it's like applying the sheet of glass over top. So the red line can take place, but it's actually showing the timeline that this was done after it was signed and sealed. So all of the information of what was there at the time you signed and sealed it is still preserved. And then the red line comments are showing that this came after the document was authenticated. If you need to like re-authenticate that, or then it would be another step to kind of put the other sheet of glass and capture everything that's been done at a new timeline.
So I would ask that we saw that as an issue in Surrey early on. And when I say we, mostly the engineering department, the building division, because these documents then, if we take this and we issue this, it goes to the client. When you do some redlining like this, it shows that something's been done to the document, and we want to avoid clients coming back, and by clients I mean the owners, the developers, asking the question, well, what's happened? You're sending me something, it says there's a problem, there's a hiccup with the document. So we were very proactive, because we went and we equipped all of our key staffs, so members of the engineering department, our plan checkers, and our plumbing and electrical, with Notarius digital signature. So when they do the redlining, and I'm looking at here the picture that that's on Marc's screen where it says approved, the plan checker, for example, will put the glass, the sheet of glass, but also with a signature, so that the integrity of the document is maintained. The same way when you have another engineer signing on top of a document. I'm not thinking here about the certified registered professional signing on top of a document. So that's the same thing here, so that we don't have these warning or these caution signs appearing on the document. But otherwise, I know some municipalities say they won't do this. They'll just put the comments on top. But to avoid any confusion, we'll put the digital signature of the person, be it the building inspector, the plan checker, or the approving authority, the engineer, and it will show up with the markups, but a valid digital signature.
Thanks, Gilbert. I have another question for you, actually. We have other clients on the line as well who may have an interest in transitioning to digital, to be able to accept digital seal, and that's especially true that we're hearing right now. That was a big rush, I imagine, as we all shifted to home. Can you talk about whether there were any significant challenges for the city once you made the decision to adopt? That might be your first significant challenge, but when you made that decision, what were the sort of administrative challenges?
The decision to adopt was made years ago. When I showed up 4 years ago, it had been made. It's just we had to transition. The equipment is there. The first, we had to get the software. So initially there was an issue with even recognizing the signature because there are some in Adobe. There were some settings that had to be implemented, and actually were implemented citywide so that the signature could be recognized as valid. There was just something to be done. Then the next one that we're facing right now is accepting the digital packages, the digital documents, so that in case of an application, so that it gets processed and sent to the various persons and moved along for the review process and the acceptance process. With having implemented the digital signature last year, we were working towards that. What happened with COVID is that it sped up. So we had some guinea pigs, some test subjects, and the first one is going through right now where we're waiting for all the applications when the entire thing is going to be done digitally, and there'll be no hard copies of any kind, and the permits will be issued to the owners all digitally. That has a challenge because the staff has to use procedures they haven't used before. They like, for example, putting the markups is not something they've done before, so they have to adapt the markups. There's also for the inspectors, so we have to put this on attach it to the building permits, and that wasn't there before, so we had to force something onto the building permit so they can be attached. Now the inspectors are going with tablets, and they'll be able to pick up the documents from there and check the signatures and go from that place, from there. The challenges for also our clients, the builders are used to give hard copies to their trades to go and do things. So now they will have to print. They can't rely on the city to printing that, or on the engineers for that matter, to provide printed copies that are then passed on to them. So they have to go and print that. And that's causing them to reevaluate how they're going to do things. But from the city perspective, what we're working towards is getting the application digitally with everything at the beginning, moving it to the approval and acceptance process, issuing it, and then through the inspection and the final conclusion of the permit, all without having to print or do anything except using the digital documents.
Okay, thank you. Scott, from the consultant side, what's been the biggest change that you've noticed, or have you had some of the similar conversations around construction documents and trades and things like that?
Yeah, I think to add to Gilbert's comments, another aspect, if we go back pre-COVID, back to how things used to be, even when with clients that were requiring hard copy submissions, what we're finding is often there's a digital workflow in the background. So there might be, we're having to send a copy or a hard copy that's been signed and sealed. But say if it's going out for tender, most of our clients are using online tendering, or it's going on BC Bid, or so at the end of the day, you've got this large format drawing that's been signed and sealed, and then it's getting scanned. And to scan it to get a decent image quality, it's fairly high resolution and massive file sizes. So you're going through this loop of creating a paper copy to then re-digitize it to be able to share it electronically. And what happened with those files is, as you zoom in, the closer you get, the poorer the image resolution or the quality is, or it's hard to pick up on the details. So you've got this massive file size that's actually a worse quality than just dealing with the PDF output. So that's something that we've definitely jumped on, trying to encourage our clients and our other consultant partners that we work with to help move clients to look at, recognizing there's some changes and there's some pains that Gilbert highlighted. You will have to change your workflow to adopt a digital workflow, but a lot of times the clients are already halfway there, or they're most of the way there, and it's just finding out what those gaps are to fix them up and make sure that you can have digital product flow smoothly through. That was my motivation for jumping onto the panel discussion today, or wanting to be part of it. And a real life example that has happened at Binnie, and I won't name clients, but on a project where we have to follow a hard copy submission during the COVID era with everyone working at home. I imagine most of the people that are on the line participating, none of them have a full scale plotter in their house. So as part of the practice,
that they do.
there might be, I'll say 1% maybe, but most of the people don't. So our office, we fully closed our offices near the end of March. And for anyone that requires a full-size copy, that means that our employees got to come in and actually plot it out. And to prepare a submission where we're the prime consultant, we've got sub-consultant members providing content. They have to come into their office and print it out and sign and seal it. But then they can't courier it to our office because there's no one there to receive it. And even if someone's there, you can't get up to the 3rd floor to deliver it. The building's locked. So they're having to courier it to our engineer of record's house. And then the engineer of record either has to come into our office to plot our drawings or coordinate with the technician to come in. Then they would come in, gather it up, sign and seal, then scan it so that we've got a file copy, and then go back to their house and call the courier to come pick it up from their house to bring to the client, who may or may not have their office open. So all of that becomes a 3-ring circus of adding cost and delays and time, and results. What I would suggest is a poor quality product at the end of the day when the client receives that, has to digitize it still so they can put it on BC Bid and put it out to market. And that doesn't even get into like the safety issues of passing physical packages around. And I kind of say, even just calling it, wet sealing kind of gives you the willies right now if you're passing on a document that's been wet sealed. So that's been our experience. We don't have digital seals for all of our engineers in the company. It's just those that are production engineers of record. And it's definitely increasing during this time. I think Marc can comment on their business volume right now is pretty high. But for the right people, we think it's a much better product. It's faster, it's more efficient, and it's good for the client as well as the consultants.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been completely nuts right now. The amount of people feeling the pain of not having a plotter at home. Who knew you needed a plotter at home when you in 2019? But yeah, no, it's been from coast to coast, and like we're seeing it in BC. City of Vancouver has undertaken the digital transformation. BC Hydro has also they were in it. They went much more quickly, much deeper, much quicker. And Ministry of Transport also going digital in record time. I mean, from hi, we're interested to hey, we're using. We're talking months here. So something that normally would take in a government environment maybe 12 months actually got zoomed very quickly into a full deployment. So very exciting. Good, nice to see also.
Yes, we're very happy to see the Ministry of Transportation make that change. It was something we started speaking with them about that maybe on the 19th of March. So it sounded like by April 1st, they were already well on their way and very happy about that. So, and Scott, you actually covered off one of my other questions for you, which was around whether it was necessary for everyone to have the digital seal in your office, but it sounds like those that are engineers of record and production engineers, those are the primary sealers anyway.
We're at about 1/3 of our PNGs have a digital seal right now.
Yeah. And that's normal. That's what we see coast to coast also. But,
George asked a question. This is kind of a user question, so feel free to make a selection who can answer this one. Curious if it was possible to batch sign and seal and have the visible seal appear on each and every document, not just the first page.
yeah, so there are sort of two schools of thoughts on this one. On the one hand, you can choose to apply to batch sign, let's say, a series of individual sheets just by selecting the group of documents and applying template and batch signing. However, and that's what we recommend. You just like you print up individual sheets of paper and then you staple them together. We highly recommend you do individual sheets, batch sign, and then merge the new package as a working copy for sake of discussion. But to answer specifically, can I do it? The answer is yes. So if I take this example here, and I'll just make it a bit bigger. It just happens that I have Consigno desktop open here. So this here is a 10-page document. So not to confuse you, but the zones that are here can be placed not only on one document or one page, but I can choose to place it on all pages or the last page or a custom selection. This is something that's unique to Consigno desktop. You're not going to be able to do this in Bluebeam or Adobe. But by placing these zones on every page now, I have the ability to apply, and I can move these around also on a page-by-page basis. I could use the stamp feature over here to apply the electronic signature. Now, if we understand the verbiage that electronic signature means only the image, I've chosen the image of my seal over here, and I want to apply it onto these 10 elements. And now these have all been stamped. Now at this point, it isn't an official record, it's still a copy, but I could go ahead and click on sign. And at this point here, it's going to ask me to apply only my digital signature certificate. So there's no link to the image, it's placing the sheet of glass on the entire document. And when I click on sign, that will go ahead and apply my digital signature onto this record. So now it has all 10 images and one digital signature. The last thing you want to do, and this is really the most important, is you do not want to take a 10-page document, apply 10 zones, and sign it 10 times with 10 digital signatures. One, it makes the file heavier to open because you're validating all 10 signatures. And two, once you place your sheet of glass, there is no merit to the 9 others. It doesn't make it any more secure. So we don't recommend you put 10 padlocks on your door. One padlock will do the job, and that is why this would be your alternative method. So as long as you use the stamping feature with the zones, you can do that and then apply a digital signature afterwards. Hopefully
Another use, if it's not in a drawing, I've also done this, say it's a contract. Back in the old days when you would initial each page of the contract, that's still something you could apply different images. So you could have your initials on the corner of every page and then have a signing with signature on this signing page as well, and do that as a batch.
Absolutely, that's the exact example here. So I have now my initials, my warm and fuzzy initials on every page, and then I can just create a zone to apply my signature afterwards. There we go. So exactly, Scott, to your point, yes, the stamping feature does work, and the use case of initials is what I would call an old school approach to signing electronic records, but it is possible to do. And as you noticed, it was only a few clicks to do that. Now, you can't do this in Adobe or Bluebeam. Adobe and Bluebeam do a whole bunch of things that are wonderful. This is not one of them, unfortunately. The signing component is pretty weak. Maybe if I can just highlight one last thing, since I've got a fairly big audience. One of the limitations of Adobe and Bluebeam is that when you merge electronic records, you lose the image of the seal and the digital signature because it creates a new package, a new document. Now, if you were to do the same thing with Consigno Desktop, the new merged file would keep the image of the seal, thus making it a copy, but at least the image of the seal would be there. And I do realize that many of you will have working packages that will be copies and originals that will be the final package that is kept for record. So just be aware that if you do encounter situations where you say, you know what, I would love to be able to have a working package with electrical, mechanical, structural. It's not an original, but it's my working package that I've the equivalent of photocopying it and assembling it with a staple. If you do it in Consigno Desktop, the images will all remain that were placed onto the document. But if you try to do the same thing in Adobe or Bluebeam, these images will disappear, making it, well, pretty dry and not necessarily the ideal scenario. So sorry for taking up so much time, but since I had so many people, I had to highlight that as a benefit. Sorry.
And since you're answering questions about how software works, there was a question earlier whether Foxit Pro software will work.
Which what?
Foxit Pro.
Yeah, Foxit, absolutely. So I didn't use Foxit for my examples, but yes, Foxit, Nitro, PDF Exchange, Nuance, all of these tools have the ability to consume an X509 certificate, which is what a digital signature is. So as long as it has the ability to consume that type of signature, you notice I had nothing to do. The PDF readers will recognize the digital signature automatically if it is installed properly on your workstation. So as long as it works as long as it's installed properly on your computer, all the different PDF readers will find that digital signature instantly.
Thanks. So Gilbert and Scott, I'm going to combine a couple of the questions and see if you can help us. We continue to be aware that there are a lot of clients out there and other entities who are not yet accepting electronic or digital sealing. So we've been trying to reach out to them and encourage. What is your advice in terms of a compelling argument that we can make when we become aware, or for those folks to start to become familiar and start to be open to accepting digital documents?
I can start with, these are probably the same clients that want to get an acceptance to suite. In our case, very often it's, I want to get an occupancy and we need documents from the professionals, the engineers or the architect, and the documents, if they're wet seals, they haven't reached the city hall, they haven't reached the inspector, and they'd say, well, they're available. Can I just fax it, or sorry, not scan, we don't fax it anymore. I'll scan and send to you. And they would like us to accept those. And we say, no, we won't, because that's against the rules. And I just did that last week. You want that? Get your engineer to send me a letter and digitally sign it, and then I can move forward. Under COVID right now, something to be aware. When we have a box where we collect things, the city hall is closed, people put things in the box, and then the mailroom people take the box and they segregate it for 24 hours and then to distribute the documents. So if someone says, I dropped off something today and I'd like to book my inspection, I get my occupancy today, well, I don't have your document, I won't get it for another day, maybe two. Too bad. So that's one thing. So when they expect, they expect the city to react, or the authorities to react at the speed of digital, they have to be digitized. The other thing that, and here it's maybe not right on point, but I was listening to Scott earlier and he made a very good point. Documents get lost. If I get a hard copy, when it has to move around different offices here, and at some point I will get an email, has anybody seen this file? Because someone has taken the document. If it goes with an inspector in the field, it's in the inspector's car. Our inspectors don't come back at City Hall at the end of the day, so we'll take them the next day. We may not be able to process it. The thing about digitally signed documents is that, and this has not been mentioned, this is something that I grabbed on many years ago. Each one of those is an original. If I have a wet sealed document, that's the only original. If we scan it and then try to transmit it, that's no longer an original. We can't do much with it. But if it's a document that comes in to me through an email and it's sealed, digitally sealed, I pass it on to my supervisor by email. That's a digitally sealed document, and then he passes on to the inspector. They can do the work. So if you expect the cities to react quickly to some of your demands, you want this. Also very important, we have, in many occasions, we have producers, and I'm sure Scott will have more to say, where the sub-consultants are not locally situated. We have we have a company that's providing us roof trusses. They're from the interior. So when we need documents from them, if they're going to courier the wet seal version, it's going to take a while to get here. So if we're going to do this thing where you're getting some contractors, some consultants that do reviews from far away or produce from far away, and you do their paperwork, expect to have, we don't anymore think about the time it takes for these papers to be transmitted in hard copies. So that's one of the reasons, and it just provides the flexibility to do it much more quickly than if you don't have that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even internally in our company, we've got engineers collaborating on projects from our Alberta office or Prince George, Kamloops. And when it comes time to assemble all of that and having individual engineers of record, it's so much easier to be able to send that electronically than calling up the courier to package it around. The only thing I'd add on the client side is I don't think, like, we're not looking to impose or change their whole system. It's having a better understanding of view of what are the barriers that are stopping being able to use digital seals, and how can we work through that together. And I think that, you know, the case of going through a paper copy to get it to then digitize it so you can, you know, scan it and put it out on BC Bid, and it's a pretty crummy resolution and it's not a very good file and it's massive file size. It's not meeting anyone's goal. So I think the approach that ACEC-BC takes working with clients is, let's identify what the goal is and how do we work together to achieve it. So I think that's pretty consistent for digital sealing as well.
Great, thanks. Maybe this is a question for Marc, possibly also Gilbert or Scott. There's a question from our friend Greg on the island, who would like to know what the best way is to digitally sign a document by multiple registered professionals.
Well, theoretically, you can have as many people digitally sign documents. If you take individuals, let's say from AIBC, EGBC, and forest professionals, then or technologists for that matter, then you would have each one would apply their digital signatures. And if one of these people was, I don't know, I don't want to single out any profession here, but I'll say psychologist, since I know it has nothing to do with this workflow. So a psychologist had to sign the document, and they didn't have a digital signature themselves. Well, nothing prevents them from either buying one or self-issuing one. It's just that their level of legal reliability would be lower. But definitely, you unfortunately can't be half pregnant. So if you take a paper document and one doesn't have a digital signature, wet sign it, scan it, and then digitally sign it, that isn't going to work, because then only one of you is actually duly authenticating those records. So be aware that trying to do hybrid paper digital projects is really like being half pregnant. Although theoretically, I guess it may be possible, it definitely is not recommended or comfortable.
And I will add, that's the reason in Surrey we went and we got Notarius signatures for our engineers, plan checkers, and inspectors. So that it would be the full pregnancy, as Marc put it.
Okay, now that we have that image in our head. So there are a number of sort of tactical questions about application and things like that. So I'm going to go through those, but before I do that, what I wanted to do was just answer a question from earlier. This is the one answer that I can provide, which is that, yes, we have agreement from the presenters that we can share a recorded version of this webinar. So if you missed something, you didn't take a note, then good news, we can look at it later. So we will make that available on our COVID-19 Resource Center. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the technical questions that people have. Hope this, I think most of these are going to go to Marc, so Gilbert and Scott can take a breath, but if you happen to know the answer, feel free. Or if you have any stories to share about times when you've run into problems. Okay, Serge was interested to know his stamp and signatures in consigno applied with a rectangular gray border. He said they were transferred from sign and scan signature appearances during initial upload of the images. Can that be removed?
I'm not sure exactly what gray background you're referring to.
I'm thinking it might be the checkerboard, you know, sometimes when you show the image transparency that,
Yeah, so if I take, for example, just so the technical questions, good news, I have it on the screen here. So when we talk about the image over here being on a background, the display transparency that you see like this here, that gray checkerboard, that's just to tell you that it is transparent. You don't need to display it. So even if I don't check off this display transparency, the image is always transparent. So it was uploaded with transparency. Now, this being said, if I go into the preferences and I were to add a signature, hopefully I've got something close at hand. I don't want to slow this down. Pictures, SharePoint connector. So I'm just going to take a horrible picture here for our purposes. You have, when you click on next, so once I, let's say, crop that this is the part that I want to use, when I click on next, we automatically in Consigno Desktop convert everything to full transparency. But let's say, and there is a proper use case for it. You have a permit stamp that you don't want to have full transparency. You want the background to be full white. Well, all you have to do is click on skip, and then that will not follow. It'll stay white as a background. So it really is either you select the background and move on to next, and that will keep transparency so that it helps you 9 times out of 10. But for the scenario where you have a stamp and you want the full white background or opaque background, then you just click on skip, and that will keep the image full white as opposed to transparent. So I hope that answers that question.
I hope so. I have no idea. Serge, please ask again if we didn't get to it. Okay, this is a follow-up from an earlier question regarding the issuing authority. So some people are finding, Jennifer has noted, that their seals are showing up as issued by Notarius, but they believe should say Engineers and Geoscientists BC, and they're wondering if that's something that they should approach Notarius to fix, or whether they should go to the regulator.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about here. So you're talking about, let's say, like the root certificate here is Notarius, and it says here that it's issued by Notarius. So ultimately, as I mentioned, the root certificate, the mother of all the children, is Notarius. So that is the trust network. Then if I go into the details though, and I'll take this example here, then I would have the designation appear over here. So unfortunately, yes, it will always say issued by Notarius, because ultimately the main branch or the root is Notarius, but anybody looking at the detail would be able to see that it includes designation, affiliation, member number, and everything that's on the wet stamp. So you can contact the association, but this isn't going to change. That's just the basics of certificate authorities, unfortunately.
That's helpful. Thanks, Marc. I think that covers it. Okay. This one actually, perhaps Gilbert could take. This is, or Scott, these are good professional engineer 101 questions. One is, Hussein was curious, doesn't any markup or red line over a sealed document invalidate the seal?
Well,
maybe Marc can answer. I don't think it invalidates, Marc, does it?
No, this is the perfect example that's why we presented this scenario here. So this is a document that has a digital signature, of the seal signature. It has a certificate of authorization. And these annotations here were added afterwards. It doesn't invalidate it, but it says that there were unsigned changes after the last signature. That would be the other message.
And that's what in Surrey we wanted to avoid, because we know it will go and say what were the changes made after. And then the other thing too is that then someone could go after that, after the city has approved the document, and put more things, and it would be the same message that there were changes that were made. So for us, by putting a notarious signature on top, that message doesn't appear because it will say all the signatures are valid. And then if somebody goes and modifies on top of that, then it will show automatically. So that was the reason we want to avoid. But no, it doesn't invalidate the signature of the engineer or the architect that puts it on, but it does gives this warning message that could be a little bit off-putting to people.
The annotations. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, Terry's having a little trouble when he converts the PDF into some formats before applying the digital seal. So he found on certain PDF documents, after converted to PDF, some parts of the drawing on the PDF were white, so the detail disappeared. Particularly the bottom right part of words were missing. Have you ever heard anything like this before?
Well, PDF conversion, depending on how it's done, what it's done, how it's done, could have an impact, but that's outside of the realm of what we can control. All I will say is that if I take, for example, a DWG file that has layers, you will want to flatten it, ideally. And yes, there are certain limitations, things you can't do if you want to convert to PDFA, so that there is an impact to it, that if you're trying to, and this is a common example, if you try and password protect a document, well, it can't be PDFA, because the way a PDFA works, it doesn't allow for that functionality to be part of the mechanisms of an archive quality PDF. So my recommendation is try to convert to flatten the file as much as possible. So I've seen, and the best example here, and I think I know what the gentleman or person is referring to. If you have form fill PDFs and you upload them, those are a bit trickier to digest. Ideally, those you would want to probably reprint just to flatten it, and then after that, it should be fine.
Great, thank you. Patrick is a city official and has an issue that some digitally certified PDFs they receive do not allow commenting over top. Is this because of a setting in Consigno, or is this another reason?
No, it's a feature of the PDF and digital signature format. So when so if I take, for example, in Consigno Desktop, I have the ability here to have a file, and when I go to sign it, I could choose one of two things. I can either certify, so sign it, which would leave it open for others to apply their signatures, or certify it, which prevents modifications to the document, with the exception of the signature zones. So if an individual chooses to certify their documents, they will prevent anybody else from redlining and marking up the document, which is really annoying. And Patrick, I feel for you. I would tell the engineers not to certify the documents moving forward. This isn't proprietary to Consigno or Notarius. You can certify just as easily in Adobe and Bluebeam. I would even say in Bluebeam, the certify button, I think, is even easier to click. We actually try to hide it a bit at the bottom and minimize it so people don't use it. So don't certify is pretty much what I would recommend, unless you really are at a final document that you are trying to prevent anybody else from adding signatures. That's really all you're doing that's different, is the ability to add more signatures or markups to it. But in both cases, you can't alter the source content.
Okay, thanks. Victor is interested in understanding if you can use this to sign a document that is non-engineering. So can you use just your signature part? For example, if you want to sign a contract.
I'll speak up on that one because I do have the Notarius. I do use Consigno, but I'm not acting as an engineer of record. So there's very rare times throughout the year that I'm actually applying my engineering seal to a document. But I get the benefit of having the software. I use it for digitally signing contracts or other documents all the time.
Great, thank you. Marc, there are two questions about other jurisdictions. Many people are registered in multiple jurisdictions, and it appears that missing from the list of jurisdictions accepting digital seal are Alberta and Ontario. Is that right?
Oh, no. Alberta, both for engineers and architects, issue digital signatures. That would be inaccurate. So from an engineering perspective, only Ontario is, and Northwest Territories. So those are the only two jurisdictions that are not issuing digital signatures. And in both cases, they've made it a requirement to use a digital signature, but just don't regulate the issuer. So in theory, anybody that has an ACEC-BC digital signature would be able to take it and apply the image of the seal and PEO, and that will exceed PEO requirements. The same can be said for US states. So all US states, if you use your ACEC-BC digital signing certificate with the image of the seal for any US state except Hawaii, you will meet or exceed the requirements of each state board.
Okay.
And Hawaii is the only exception because they're the only one that is paper only. They don't recognize the existence of an electronic original, which is a bit odd for a landlocked an island with limited resources.
Frequent rainstorms and the risk of tsunami. Okay. So, okay. Wendy was curious. Many times when we have appendix sections of large reports that are authenticated by others, so many times they have appendix sections of large documents authenticated by others. Can two different Notarius Consigno documents be combined? So for instance, I authenticate a technical memo to be included as an appendix in a document that somebody else will be authenticating.
So the answer to that is yes, you can merge it, and yes, the digital signatures will be removed from the new file. We have to remember that the purpose of a digital signature is to secure the entire electronic document. That's its reason for existing, is to secure that file. It's what prevents somebody from removing a single page of your report and replacing it with something that you wouldn't want that report to say. So unfortunately, once you merge that new document, then it has to be re-digitally signed if you wanted to secure it over again. This being said, there is the ability to add attachments, which is what I would recommend as sort of as an alternative. So for sake of example, let's say that I've got a drawing over here, and for sake of discussion, we'll say that what I'd like to do with this 10-page document is add some attachments of the individual files. So in my case, I will go ahead and I would like to add the contract, and I would like to add so since I realize that we are talking with engineers here, for sake of discussion, I'll take these drawings. So I've now added these, let's say 3 signed files or big packages, and put them into one PDF file that is the merged version of all these elements. And then I could apply another digital signature to this if I wanted to secure the entirety of the document. But the whole idea is that moving forward, and this is something that we've seen with Alberta Transportation as they went digital, and what I likely expect from MOTI or transport in BC is you produce individual sheets, you then attach them, You do all the individual sheets, you merge them into a single package that is a copy, you attach all the individual signed sheets as attachments, and then you choose if you have to re-sign this package or submit it as the working copy, which is the merge full file that you're looking to do, which was the question. But in the attachment folder here, you have all the individually signed files. So you have the best of both worlds, the merge package with all the images of the seal and so on, and the individual digitally signed sheets that you can keep as your official record. And that's literally how Alberta Transportation is doing this. And in your case here, it would look, it would be the attachments that you would find over here that could be exported also afterwards. So I realize this is a bit abstract and I may have confused a few of you, but the short answer is once you merge documents, you'll lose the signature. The long answer is one I just gave you.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and then what I'd like to do is ask each of you to just give a brief closing statement. If you want us to leave today with one thought, what would it be? So I'll let you get prepared for that, and we'll let Marc answer one more question, which is from Ian. Marc mentioned that the digital signature is installed on your computer. Is this installation unique to your Windows profile on that computer only? Can someone logging in on another profile access the signature? And alternatively, can the digital signature be accessed from another computer on a company's network or through personal computer or the cloud? So basically, where is this sitting and who can access it?
All right. So we'll break it down in a few answers, but essentially here, if you look on the screen here, this is my digital signature. So for those of you looking to be underwhelmed, this is a small 28K file that sums up your identity and professional designation in one little 28K file. This little file here can be copy and pasted. It can be emailed to you or to your home. You can reinstall the software for free at home and use this. If ever you lost this, you could download it from our website and retrieve a new copy of it. So it is very fluid and transparent to use on various workstations. Now, as far as somebody being able to use it, they couldn't, because the only way to use this is with the password. And this is where two-factor authentication comes in, and it's really important, where you have, on the one hand, something I have, the certificate, and something I know, the password. And of course, if you had a higher level of security, you'd have something I am, which would be biometrics. But for our purposes, you're really using two components, something I have, the certificate, and the password to sign and seal documents. So it is always under your control, and that's why it's legally reliable, and you don't have to worry about it. Even if it is on your workstation and somebody unlocked it, they still couldn't use your digital signature without the password. At this point, I'd like to remind you that if you put your password on a Post-it note on your screen, I can't help you with that. Can't save you from yourself, but if you don't do that, we should be fine. But it is very easy to install in various environments.
Marc, I'm not sure if you touched on before just that process of actually issuing the certificate in the first place, and you don't have biometrics, but you are validating identities and holding up your passport or your driver's license to confirm before you issue that?
Yes, we actually do a face-to-face ID verification because we are a government grade certificate authority and we are recognized by various provincial governments and federal government. We require that we verify the civic identity of individuals, so that is our responsibility. And you're right, it is a video session that is done where you present two pieces of government issued ID, and then afterwards we send off the request once we've verified it to the association, and they verify that what we verified was matched their records, and then they actually press the button to authorize the issuance of that digital signature. I hope that answered the question.
I think it did. Okay, so Scott, we'll start with you. If you want us to leave with one thought from today, what's your thought?
Well, I think what we've all seen in the current situation with COVID and working from home is it's been remarkable how adaptable everyone is, but the creativity and the solutions that people have come up with in a really short period of time. The whole industry is transformed practically overnight to working from home environments. And that's been on the consultant side as well as the client side. And so I think we're in a unique period of time where we've really concentrated that problem solving focus and the ability to make things better and to make do with situation that's outside of our control. And to me, the digital sealing and signing opportunities are there, that we're already in the midst of massive change. So what used to before seem like a major hurdle is actually not a big hurdle. We've dealt with a lot more challenging things over the last couple of months. So my message would be to continue to work together with clients and consultants, identify what those hurdles are. Where they used to seem like they were insurmountable, I think we all have a different perspective on that now and what actually can be done, and work together to make the whole system work best for everyone. So that would be my pitch.
Thanks, Scott. Gilbert.
Scott made a very good point. We've moved forward, and I don't see municipalities that have gone this way of talking to others in the Lower Mainland going back into their processes to what it was before. We're trying to leverage, in some ways it's leveraging a bad situation to get things moving faster than we could have before. The digital signature is a very small component in the whole process, but it's quite crucial to achieving a paperless workflow. And clients who think, well, after this, we'll go back to the old ways, it's not going to work that way. And likely what happened is that municipalities will still accept paper, but there's going to be delays and costs associated with that, because now definitely we're all focusing on going paperless and handling digital documents so we can get to the end results much faster.
Great, thank you. And Marc.
Yeah, I would say that I've been involved now with digital signatures with ACEC-BC for pretty much a decade now. And it's been interesting to see the evolution from speaking to municipalities at first that couldn't manage even electronic files, just the idea of where to store PDF files, and how fast and how quickly, to Gilbert and Scott's point, that people have been able to jump the shark or get to the end result of electronic records. What I find interesting, and maybe just as a quick stat, it's a lot easier today to implement digital signatures than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Gilbert can attest to it.
Yeah.
At one point, ID verification forced an individual to go to Canada Post to get their identity verified by a clerk who had to pull out a book because they didn't know how to do it, because they did it so few times. And it would take forever. It would take 5, 10, 15, 20 business days. So just to give a sense of size, we, generally speaking, maybe 5, 6 years ago, if we were doing 100 signatures a month, that was wonderful. Last month, in essentially 18 business days, we were able to fully issue, verify, sign up, issue over 2,000 signatures in the month of April. So when we say, is there an appetite and is it easy? The answer is yes. It definitely works now, and it is part of. We know what to expect, and it's fairly transparent for the end users today than it is ever before. Fantastic.
And Marc, one last thing. I understand there was a 100th anniversary special offered through BBC. Is that still valid?
I wasn't going to plug anything, but now that you mention it,
might as well.
And also, so both ACEC-BC and ourselves, for the COVID and 100-year anniversary, so we offered $100 off the sign-up fee that is usually $140. ACEC-BC chipped in another $40, so that it would cost nothing to sign up for the first 500 people that registered when this all started. So it's until limited supply, but there are still some signatures available at that cost. And we definitely recommend, if you are thinking about it, not to sound cheesy, but if you're thinking about it, I definitely wouldn't wait more than a week or two before we hit that final plateau of rebates. After that, you'll go back to the $100 off till the end of June. But ACEC has been really wonderful and cooperative in making sure that they try to help, and it's actually brought on the idea to other associations to look at doing the same thing to help out their members in these out of ordinary times.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Scott, Marc, Gilbert. Thanks to all of our participants today for your many questions as well. As we mentioned earlier, a copy of this file will be made available to you. You can find it on our COVID-19 Resource Center on acec-bc.ca, where you'll also find other industry news, resources, and information about future webinars. This concludes today's session. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your participation in upcoming webinar events.